What's up, people, and welcome back to episode
5
of the series Powerlifter to Weightlifter. This time we will actually review 2 weeks, week 5 and week 6 of Jonas' journey, since we recently moved to a bi-weekly upload schedule. And to kick off the session, Jonas, let us know how your last 2 weeks went. And what I'm specifically curious about is if you implemented or changed anything compared to your learnings from week 4.
Yeah, so as we explained in the last video, we have actually merged the review of week 5 and week 6. Reason being that the actual progress between the previous weeks was not too big, since I am mainly training for a technique and still figuring out some technique stuff and still having technique issues, which is why we compiled week 5 and week 6. And based on the learnings we generated from week 4, we actually still kept the training days at 4 days for week 5, but then at the end of week 5 I was noticing that I am still super fatigued and I was still super tired, which is then in week 6, next to time constraints since I was traveling for work. So we basically switched the training plan from 4 to 3 days, which actually worked quite well. We basically cut out the last training day where I was doing the hang snatches, and we're only focusing on the 3 previous training days during that week, and that worked out quite well. So at the end of last week, even though I was traveling, I was training in different places, I was not training in my regular gym, I still felt quite recovered, I still felt fresh. And at the end of the training week, my coach also asked me if I wanted to do a deload, since I basically didn't do a proper deload for like 6 weeks now. But I said to him, hey, I'm still feeling fresh, I'm still feeling good after now moving to 3 training days, which is why we keep pushing, and we keep on training and keep on adding the weights.
What about your reps? Did that change, or are you still up with the higher repetitions per set?
Yes, so the actual repetitions per set and the actual exercises did not change. Since week 1, I'm still doing squats for sets of 8, sets of 5, also front squats, sets of 8, and the other exercises and the other training plan and training scheme did not change basically. So I'm still basically training the same volume. The only factor that is changing week by week is that the weight, so the actual tonnage I'm moving is going up, which of course accumulates to lots of volume or more volume, but in terms of sets and reps, it actually stayed the same now in week 5 and week 6.
I found it pretty interesting when you were calculating your total volume now in squats or front squats versus what you've done during your powerlifting journey, and that actually now your volume is way higher than what you used to do while doing your powerlifting training sessions.
Yeah, so what I did is, because I was feeling so exhausted and my legs felt so heavy, I was basically calculating the amount of tonnage I was doing during my last powerlifting block, where I was squatting 180 kilos for sets and reps. And I basically came up with the conclusion that even now the weights are a lot lighter, I'm doing like 1.5 times of the actual volume I was doing compared to my powerlifting training block, which is quite interesting. I can imagine when the weights get heavier and when the absolute load I'm training with is going to be heavier, it's going to be tough, and I think I wouldn't be able to do that much volume like I'm doing at this point. But it was still interesting to see the raw volume I'm doing, or the raw tonnage I'm moving at this point.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you tend to feel that you're not doing much weight, but if you calculate that actually up, it's adding up to quite some weight which you are moving day in, day out. Cool. Then next question. Do you feel that your mobility is in some senses improving Let it be your squat mobility, but also maybe your front rack position mobility.
Yeah, so I feel like the hip mobility is getting better, and also the front rack. So my upper back, and then also the ability to get into a proper front rack position is getting better. Holding that position is another story. That's still quite challenging for me, but getting into the actual positions is easier. I think main factor contributing to the increased hip mobility, or at least a better feeling in my hip, are the long pause squats. I'm actually paying attention to do proper 3 seconds pause, as it is programmed in my training plan. Normally when nobody's watching or when I'm training by myself, I try to keep these pauses rather short. So I'm kind of skipping the time I'm spending in the lowest squat position. And now I always just ask a random person, or ask Mike, anybody that is standing close, and then tell them, hey, could you please watch that I'm doing the proper pauses and count the proper seconds. And that works quite well, as you can see in the videos that we are laying over the clips here. That actually contributes quite well to my mobility. And then for the front rack position, my coach actually showed me a quite interesting exercise, which is basically getting into the front rack position with more weight than you're usually doing in your front squat. Just getting in the position with lifting straps and then pushing the elbows up as high as possible to basically stretch your wrists, but then also your lats, and get more loose in the whole upper back area to be able to get the elbows higher and to maintain this position a little bit better. I'm still having issues in the actual front squat when the weights get heavier, and I tend to fall forward a little bit to keep the elbows high or at a high point, but still doing this exercise already helps quite a lot and gives me a good feeling when I'm going in the squat position. What my coach also advised me was to not do this exercise prior to the front squat session, since it really exhausts your smaller muscles in the shoulders, so they won't be able to stabilize that position if you do that prior to your lifting session. So he recommended doing it afterwards, so your smaller muscles in your shoulder or your rotator cuffs can actually recover properly, and you can basically move back in this position during your next session a few days later.
That's a good hint. As you can see in the videos, you trained in quite some different places in the past 2 weeks. I think you switched gyms 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. How did you feel about that? Did that disrupt your training routine in any matter, or didn't it bother you at all now switching the gym that often and you got used to it?
So I was training in 3 different gyms during the last, or actually 4 different gyms during the last 2 weeks. It was basically due to some time constraints, or also due to the fact that I was traveling and didn't have access to the weightlifting gym here in Munich, which is why I had to train at commercial gyms at some point. And the challenges you face in these commercial gyms are that there are no proper barbells. So in case there are barbells that are okay-ish in terms of knurling and in terms of grip, most of the time the bushings are not in good condition and they don't spin well. So yeah, that next to the fact that there are most of the time not proper platforms, or the platforms are uneven and not in perfect condition. These are challenges that you tend to face when you're training in commercial gyms. And of course, in commercial gyms, the lifting crowd is a little bit different compared to the crowd that is normally training in a weightlifting gym. So people don't pay attention what you're doing at this point. They just tend to walk in your side. They tend to train right in front of you when you're doing technical exercises or technically demanding exercises. So that can be quite disturbing. They get really, really close to the bar, which can also be quite dangerous actually for them. And it is of course quite disturbing for me. But overall, I'd say the best gym in my opinion was the ESV Munich East, so the regular weightlifting gym where I'm training at this point. But then there's also a gym here in Munich called the Alp Gym. They have proper Eleiko platforms, Eleiko barbells, and then also plates, so you can train with really good equipment there. Training there is actually quite fun compared to the other two gyms I trained at during the last 2 weeks. These are more like commercial gyms with really small weightlifting sections in areas. It's still doable to do your training session there, but it's not perfect. But overall, I'd say my favorite gym during the last 2 weeks was definitely my home gym here I'm training at. And I feel that the training sessions are easier, you get feedback from your coaches, and the equipment and the community and atmosphere there is the most supporting.
Also makes sense because that was the only pure weightlifting gym you've been at. Let us know in the comment section if you're interested in any detailed review of the gyms where Jonas trained at. Just mention in the comment which minute so we know which gym you're actually interested in. What was the hardest exercise or movement for you? And when I say hardest, I mean either it could be because of the weight, it got heavy, so you couldn't do the movement properly. It could be the number of reps because it felt like too much cardio, or it could be in regards to technical flow. So what was actually the biggest challenge what you faced the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, so in terms of volume, I'd say I've adapted quite well to the amount of volume I'm doing at this point. So sets of 8 in the squat, which used to be really demanding for me and really exhausting during my powerlifting days, are actually now at this point quite easy. The only exercise that was quite tricky during my week 6 actually was the muscle snatch, and then followed by the overhead squat. Muscle snatch being a very technical exercise where you need to be really on point. I need to be dialed in with your snatch technique, and I'm still struggling with this a little bit. You're also seeing this in the reps of my set that I filmed during the training session. So that was week 6, day 2 actually. That was quite hard, and which is why I couldn't do the weights which were prescribed to me during that session. I needed to drop down the weights after that really heavy set of 55 kilos. I just basically made the last rep a really big grinder. But yeah, just I think how I can fix this is basically getting more proficient in the snatch technique and also managing the muscle snatch a little bit better, focusing on extension and focusing on pulling with my elbows a little bit higher to just make the transition point of moving the bar from a pull to a push motion a little bit smoother. And I think that's how we can tackle this issue in the next week, in week 7 and 8.
Yeah, that's actually true, and I think that is also what I was talking about a couple of weeks back when we talked about the muscle snatch, that this exercise is super fun, but at some point you get to a weight where it's not fun anymore, because that could be super easy with a specific weight, but then you're just adding 2 or 3 or 4 kilograms and it's getting super hard. So as you said, it's super technical, and there are some minor things which you need to think about, where you need to get the timing very right to actually move the weight. Then last question. I'm interested in what was the key feedback which you got from your coach in the past 2 weeks, and which you will probably then also focus on for your upcoming 2 weeks.
Yeah, so the main feedback was that during my clean and also during the front squat, I always have issues with keeping the elbows up, and the issue I'm having at this point is that the elbows are always facing downward and not facing upward, and I'm always compensating with my wrists because my wrists are so flexible. I always tend to compensate here, and the whole movement is coming out of my wrist and not out of my shoulder and out of my upper back.
Wait, it's flexible in the sense of flexible like that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's quite flexible, and which is why I can maintain the front rack position with my elbows being so low, because normally the elbows are supposed to be higher, so there's not much flexion on your wrist. But I'm trying to tackle this with, yeah, as I said, the mobility exercise that I've implemented now for the front rack position, just to get more stable in the front rack and to be able to keep my elbows up better than I'm doing at this point. So that was the main feedback that I received from my coach, next to the regular feedback of trying to sit down a little bit deeper in my squats, in my overhead squats, in my snatches, but he actually complimented my overhead squats. They are almost at parallel level now, so they are a little bit deeper, and also when I'm snatching, I'm able to go a little bit deeper into the catch position, which is nice. But we're still only in week 6 of 20, so there are still some more weeks to go and some more progress to be made.
So progression is ongoing. I think for the next upcoming weeks, it will be probably also super interesting to film a few of your mobility exercises or warm-up sets, so you guys can also see what Jonas is doing and what's helping him to get more mobility in regards to squat depth, front rack position, or whatever. So definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button to not miss out on these details. And as always, also let us know in the comment section if you are interested in anything. Also, if you even have some tips for Jonas, if you went through a similar journey, we are more than happy to read all your advices. And I would say up until then, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And Jonas wants to say something.
And peace out.